Hello, everybody. This is Sue Frederick. I want to have a mystical conversation with you, the kind where we lose ourselves in the wonders of divine mysteries, share dreams from the other side, intuitive nudgings, and soul mission yearnings. Well, today's guest is the perfect person to have this kind of a conversation with. And let me introduce him in a minute, but I want to introduce myself. My name is, as you know, Sue Frederick. I'm a lifelong intuitive, a master numerologist, ordained unity minister, soul regression therapist. I've been on my spiritual journey since my husband crossed in 1980. And I started asking the questions of who are we? Why are we here? Why do we suffer? And where do our loved ones go? Those great questions also brought Chris Ryan to us today. And Chris is our incredible guest. He is the author, but would you call it author, Chris, or would you say compiler?
Yeah, I would say a little bit of both. A lot of compiling and
Editing
rounding things up, but also wrote quite a bit.
of the most beautiful book called Helping Fathers Heal. Now, some of you know that I've been very involved with the big nonprofit called Helping Parents Heal, but in this nonprofit, there are subgroups, and one of them is the dads group. And, Chris, like many dads, when his beautiful son departed, he was pulled gently to go and attend one of those dads groups. And as you can see, it has brought him to an amazing place of being able to publish many dad stories. So here's his official bio. Chris Ryan and his wife, Sin Collip, live in Chris's hometown of San Diego, California. Chris's professional background is in marketing communications, having worked in radio and advertising agencies for more than 35 years. This ultimately led Chris to create his own video production company. Chris and Sin have one child in spirit, Shawn Gabriel Ryan. Shawn transitioned on September 7th, 2021, at the age of 23 from fentanyl poisoning. He was 2 weeks shy of his 24th birthday. Since Shawn's passing, Sin and Chris dove into research about the afterlife, which led them to find this amazing group, Helping Parents Heal. They attended the 2022 Helping Parents Heal conference in Phoenix and found it to be extremely helpful and healing, especially when they got a surprise visit from Shawn during a public reading given by our beloved Farah Gibson, one of the intuitive mediums who works with Helping Parents Heal. That moment really jolted both of them, wouldn't you say, into a whole different world's view of, what happens when we die. And so I'm so happy to have you with us, Chris. But I think I just want to go back right now to your first impressions when Shawn crossed. Was there a part of you that felt you knew that this was a soul agreement that was going to happen, or how did it affect you?
Um, I I had just a level of trust. Um, I didn't I didn't suffer the some of the signs and some of the things people go through when their child transitions. I mean, I had moments of anger, anguish, but I had I don't know if it's a knowing, but a sense of trust that somehow this is all part of a plan. I hadn't done a lot of research at that point, although I have always read spiritual books and have been very open-minded about spirituality. And having grown up in a Baptist church environment, I had to kind of break free of that. And the way I did that was a lot of personal work and a lot of time alone. And I just trust that there is a purpose, even if I don't understand what it
I
is right
love
now.
that so much, Chris, because as you know, I just told you that you're on in this lifetime the Cancer 33 Master Soul, the highest frequency soul path that a soul can come in on. So it makes perfect sense that you would be seeking spiritual answers from the time you were little,
Mhm.
saying this religion I'm growing up in doesn't resonate as true, and I've got to find out what is true. That is
Mhm.
such a beautiful telling of the master soul journey, to the point where when your beloved only child crosses, one of the first intuitive nudgings you get is somehow this is part of the divine order plan of our soul agreements. That is so advanced, and it takes many grieving people decades to get to that kind of an acceptance or a realization. But what I also love about it is that you did it and then not only wanted to help and heal you and your wife, but you've now reached out to all these other dads. So how did this book project develop where you wanted to tell their stories?
Well, I'm not an author, so I've never written anything like this before, and I didn't go into the group thinking that was my purpose. I just went in looking for help and support. And the first time I got a nudge about the book was we had a reading from a medium, maybe about 9 months after Shawn's transition.
Mhm.
Uh, so it would have been, I think, the summer after he transitioned, and she said, "There's a book in you." She was pointing to me, and I was scratching my head. I had no idea what she was talking about. I hadn't even thought of it. Um, but that began maybe the wheels turning just a little bit. And as I started being more frequent with Helping Fathers Heal, which is a weekly support Zoom call with 25 to 35 dads from all around the world, mostly in the Western Hemisphere, but Canada, Brazil, we've got a lot of guys that come. And I just was really profoundly moved by the stories that they were telling. And the children in those stories were so fun and unique and had such a sense of humor. And I just felt like, even though this is a very private group, it's a very safe place for guys to be emotionally raw. They still there was stories to be told, and I feel that every time I tell my story, there's some healing that's happening.
Right.
And you hear somebody else's story and you feel the healing. I read David Kessler's book, Finding Meaning, and it really was profound how, and it's just like when we went to Al Anon many years, we learned, because Shawn had kind of a tendency to try to self-medicate. And so we would learn about the 12 steps, and acceptance is the first step. And then healing comes through service. And so it just kind of made sense that I move in that direction. So that's where
But
the idea came from originally. It was just
that's,
this feeling of helping myself heal, but then
yeah.
helping other fathers and other children participate and heal.
But here's the thing, you're not even giving yourself credit. I mean, this loss of yours was only what, 2 or 3 years ago, and you're already.
Yeah, not even, it was about a year and a half when the book started. It was just coming up on 2 years.
And here you are, beautiful Chris, 33 Master Soul, not only writing everybody's stories, getting them into a book, but this book will reach the dads who are not part of Helping Parents Heal, who are
Mhm.
looking for a group of dads who've lost their children, but are now establishing a new kind of relationship with their children in spirit. Because that is the difference between Helping Parents Heal and regular grief groups, is that Helping Parents Heal acknowledges that consciousness never dies, that we are spirits, that spirits are eternal, and that when someone crosses, there are ways that we can continue a relationship with them and communicate with them. And this is no longer woo-woo. This is quantum physics. This is proven in all kinds of consciousness studies. So what would you say is your first experience of knowing that Shawn was okay and on the other side alive and well after he crossed?
Well, that's, I think, two different things. I had an experience with Shawn maybe a couple 3 weeks after his transition. But it wasn't like I didn't get any words at that point. It was no um, like alive and well. I didn't really know where he was or where I was. But one night I was going to bed. My wife's in, she was house sitting, so the house was empty, just me and two dogs. I laid down to sleep, and just before sleep, there's, I have a picture of Shawn, very similar to the one over my shoulder, same session, black and white, beautiful picture of Shawn. Um, it's the one that's in the book. And I looked at that before I went to bed, and I looked at it really kind of deeply. And then I laid down, and after about 5 minutes, his eyes from that picture kind of came into my vision. My eyes were closed, but I could see his eyes, and then his face with his smile became three-dimensional.
Wow.
And I knew I was with him. I didn't know what was happening, but I knew that he was there and I was with him, but I was somehow lying in a bed, but I was with him in a different dimension. And then he turned and he started walking, and we were walking together, but somehow he wasn't leading me. It's like I could manipulate what was happening, and I could move us in different places, turning.
Yeah.
It only lasted maybe, I don't know, 5 minutes. And then I finally opened my eyes just to see if I could see something.
Yeah.
And that's when things kind of came back to normal, and I lost the vision.
So, what did that experience tell your soul? What did you believe after that experience?
Oh, I believed that I had been with him. Absolutely. He and I met somewhere,
Yeah.
and that we were together. And all I felt was there were no words, but there was just this sense of love and relaxation. Like, like, like as a human, you have all these things going on that you're conscious or unconscious of or subconscious. But at that moment, it was just complete freedom with him. It was like I was flying.
I love this so much because, when we leave the body, we're in the divine realms, and that's where it is unconditional love. That's where everything is alive and well and happy, and there's no suffering. And it's because here on earth is our school, the hard place that we come to evolve. So I love it that your instant connection with Shawn was he's peaceful and happy and alive and present, and he's not in pain. He's not suffering in any way,
Yeah.
because that is so important for grieving people to understand that even if our departed was suffering when they crossed, the minute they left their body, they were no longer suffering, whether it was mental, emotional, or physical suffering. So we don't want to hold that memory of their pain as the way we think of them. We want to think of
Yeah.
them as free and happy and helping us down here with their beautiful love and their beautiful energy. Is
Yeah.
that kind of how you felt him in that experience?
I did. Yeah. I felt a great sense of encouragement. Words don't really
Right,
work.
right.
There are really no words for how it feels, but I did feel a sense that it's all right. It's
Would
okay.
would you say that the other dads in the group, for the most part, have had those experiences too? Or how do you guys talk about those experiences?
Uh, I've shared that once. I'm sensitive because I know that there are fathers that are in our grief is also different, and their experience, they may be frustrated because they haven't had a dream or they can't experience that with their son or daughter. So I try to be very sensitive to the fact that something that's special that happened to me can be exciting, and I share it in our Facebook group, Helping Fathers Heal,
Mhm.
because it happened to me again last week, only
Oh,
the second time.
tell us, tell
Um,
us, tell us about that.
well, in that one, I was in a dream and I was asleep. So it was a dream. It was not
Mhm.
anything. I knew I was dreaming. But in my dream, I was having a dream of Shawn as a baby sleeping on my chest, which is one of my favorite memories as a dad. And when they're so small and just that warmth and the heartbeat, everything. So I was having that dream and I woke up and I'm laying in bed and I'm aware that I'm awake. And I asked Shawn, please take me back to that dream. And before I fell asleep, my the way I was sleeping, I was on my side. My left hand was on my wife's hip. My right hand was down by my side. That position that I was in, all of a sudden, he appeared and I saw his face and his head moved. His eyes were open. He was slightly smiling. He was about 5 or 6 years old. He was wearing a striped shirt that I'd seen him wear in a school picture, but he couldn't see me. Our eyes didn't lock. There was not a eye to eye contact. It was just kind of his head moving and smiling. And then I realized I had my left hand around him and my right hand was holding his calf. So he was like sitting in my lap.
Oh,
Even though I was laying in bed, I felt the warmth and the round, soft, fleshy skin of his calf. You know, as a 4 or 5 year old, it's still kind of soft
yeah.
baby fat. And I felt the warmth around his torso with my left hand.
Oh,
And I felt such gratitude and love. It just love is not even the word that could comprehend what it is. It was just such a feeling of I was transported. I was not here. I was somewhere else with him.
yeah.
And I got up and I journaled about it the next morning because
This
I
is
didn't want to
so
forget it.
good. I mean, I think I told you that you're going to be writing even your own book, your own story at some point. And these are experiences that even if you're a little shy about sharing them in the group, the more you write about these experiences and share or make videos about them and share them with the group, with the world at large, the more you're helping grieving people to know what's possible and that it's
Mm.
real.
Yeah.
Because, like you said, when you feel it, when you feel the presence of that spirit in a very tangible way, nobody can make you doubt that.
Mhm.
That is your knowingness now that the soul of Shawn lives on fully and can
Mhm.
even materialize as his physical self to help you when you need it.
Yeah. Yeah.
I had an
It's amazing.
experience, Chris, when my husband Paul died, that night after he'd crossed and I'd come home from the hospital, I was in the bed that we had shared. And all of a sudden, I was between wake and sleep, and I viscerally felt him cuddling with me. I could feel his
Mm.
legs the way they always
Mhm.
felt, the way he
Mhm.
cuddled. It was so physical and so
Mhm.
real. And
Yeah.
then this being of light reached over me and tapped him, and then his soul lifted up
Mm.
because at that point in the grief, the guides were making sure that he would keep moving along. But since then, he's also come back in that very visceral sense, just to show me, the physical body is something we can kind of, what's the word? Bring with us if it's needed for you to understand that we still exist. We don't need
Mhm.
that physical body in the divine realms, but we know you all do.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that's beautiful. And you probably felt such love from your husband.
Oh, that unconditional love, like you say, it goes beyond words.
Yeah.
It's not a love that we really experience here on earth. And
Mm-mm.
so when we get lifted up to the other realm to feel that, it's like being at home again. We
Mm.
remember, oh, this is real. This is what
Mm.
love really is. This is where I came from.
Yeah.
And that's the beautiful thing about knowing that Shawn is in that realm,
Yeah.
This earth world is hard on advanced souls because there is so much unconsciousness here. And Shawn, from what we know, was a one path visionary, going to break all the rules, going to do it
Mhm.
his way. He was not here to learn how other people live and follow that path. And so that kind of a journey was to wake up a lot of people, not only you and Sin, but obviously it's already trickled out to helping parents heal and everything. And
Mm.
so he had a great force of life in that presence, even if he couldn't stay long, even if his soul mission was fulfilled early on, he
Mhm.
accomplished so much by following that one path, willful point of view of I've got to show the world how I believe it works.
Mhm. That sounds very familiar. Yeah.
So another thing is when you were putting this beautiful book together, how did you get these dads who I know some of them probably weren't comfortable writing their story or maybe even sharing it? How did you get them to agree to do this and then help them write their stories?
Actually, that's a good question because I put this idea out there during one of our weekly calls and just thought, do you guys think this is an idea that's worth pursuing? Is anybody interested in doing this with me? And I think about 9 or 10 guys, I can look back, but I think about 9 or 10 guys raised their hand that night and I got their contact information. And then the next week we asked again, and there's always a little bit of a revolving door of some dads coming and going
Yeah.
each week. So there's always some new faces. And some of the people that raised their hand were actually some of the newer dads that were new on their journey,
Mhm.
um, which was really courageous. And then some of the dads have been at it a little bit longer. But I was really surprised by how many were willing. I think about 30 raised their hands, but some people just couldn't do it and it fell out. Now that's fine. But to have 25 at the end was beyond my goal. My goal was to have 20.
Yeah.
But the more people were hearing about it as we were having more meetings and people were talking about writing their stories,
Yeah.
and they really wrote it. I mean, there's only a couple where we interviewed them, maybe just one where I did a Zoom interview and then we transcribed it and wrote it for him.
Mhm.
But otherwise, they did it themselves. And
That's so great.
my co-editor, Tom Madsen, he would work with them on constructing the foundational story and getting the narrative together. I did provide them with 10 questions that would
That's good.
help them sort of, okay, it's not that I have to write an essay of 3,000 words and start with a blank piece of paper and no ideas. I tried to give them some
Yeah.
ideas of, tell me what your child was like. What
Right.
are some of your favorite memories with your child? Um, if you're comfortable, talk about your child's transition.
Yeah.
And then what was the grief experience like for you shortly thereafter?
Yeah.
What surprised you about it? Where did your help come from? What have you learned? What advice would you have for other dads? So they had kind of an outline or a template to go by. And it was really as easy as writing a paragraph or two about each of the questions, and then their
Yeah.
story was
Well, what
complete.
struck me about the book is how different all these stories are.
Oh, yeah.
Like my feeling was that any dad or anybody who's grieving who picks up this book will find some story that really relates to them and resonates with
Mhm.
their worldview and their devastation through whatever loss they've been through, because they're all different kinds of stories. There's
Yeah.
the daughter dying from an illness, there's all the fentanyl overdose, which all of us are way too aware of these days in the world.
Mhm.
And then there are also people taking their own life, which is such a hard loss for parents. I thought it was wonderfully courageous of you to share all those different stories in this book so that a dad, no matter how their child was lost to them in the physical, will find a way to see that story reflected in this book and
Yeah.
know that there's hope and healing and connection.
Yeah. Yeah. Beautifully said. Um, we all, one of the fathers said this, and I really thought it was very true, is that we all grieve the relationship we had with our loved one. So there's no way that anybody could ever have the same grief as another person because you're grieving the specific connection that you had with that soul. My grief is different than my wife's because she's a mom
Yeah.
and she had different memories and different kind of cellular connection to her son. As a father, I think fathers grieve differently because we have some cultural programming, and then we also have our own individual personalities and sometimes strengths or limitations with regard to connecting with our emotions.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But I was reading in your book, and it's so well put. You have this beautiful foreword from Gordon Smith, and then you
Mhm.
write another beautiful, let's see, introduction, I guess you'd call it. And
Mhm.
in that, you really talk about how men in our culture are still raised to believe that they have to be the provider, they have to be strong, and they have to not cave into their pain and their emotions. Even though we say we're so advanced in our world these days, um, those caricatures of men and women still exist, that the man
Mhm.
is supposed to be the strong provider.
Mhm.
And I do believe what you say in there is so true, that so when grief comes along, they'll watch their wife or other family members fall apart, but they'll feel like, I've still got to carry on. I got to keep the family together. I've got to make a
Yeah.
living or whatever
And we
that
have to try to fix it,
fix it. And I've got to
because
fix it somehow.
right. I've got a toolbox. I've got a workshop. I've dads, take their sons out to the garage to show them how to change the oil. It's like, yeah, fathers oftentimes are fixers, or at least that's, I come from a media background. So it's interesting that television is called programming
Yes.
because our culture has so many signals and programs
Right.
that are putting us into a position where we feel like, well, I should be this or I should be doing that. Or, we're just ill equipped when it comes to grief. It just strips all that away. And we're trying to understand it through these filters of programming. And, and yet inside of us, it's like, oh, I'm hurting way down deep inside, much deeper than all that, superficial stuff. I need
Yeah.
help. And that's where the book, but also our group every week, it's a safe place for dads to come and share that
Yeah.
vulnerability and be completely honest and cry or drop F bombs
Yeah.
or, share a wonderful reading that they had with a medium, because those are high points for us.
Yeah.
We love that when we connect with our children.
I love the idea of these grieving dads knowing that even if they feel they have to be strong for their family, they will have this group to come
Hmm.
together with, where tears and anger and guilt and all of those things can be processed and talked about openly,
Hmm.
and they can be vulnerable. Because, like you, Chris, you are more sensitive than probably all the women in Helping Parents Heal, because you're on this Cancer 33 Master Soul journey. And yet you also have to keep it together as the man and the father and the husband. So, moving through grief for you and putting this book together, what would you say is next for you? I mean, I know you're a video maker. I know you're very much involved with Helping Parents Heal. What do you think is your next step in this journey?
It's interesting. This year, and just in the past, since the beginning of the year, so the past 6, 7, 8 months, I've been unplugging from things, if that makes sense. Um, I'm on several boards, nonprofits. I do a lot of work, charity, and I have a lot. I got myself busy in my grieving process. I tried to make a difference, and I tried to plug into a lot of things that would give meaning to Shawn's life and my feelings. But I'm finding myself withdrawing for some reason, and I just feel like kind of freeing myself from things. So I'm getting close to retirement, and I want the freedom to be able to do some traveling and just kind of get out of my day to day, what I'm seeing out this window over my shoulder every day,
Right.
So there's a part of me that feels like adventure is in front of me, but I don't exactly know what that's going to look like. I don't have a specific focus on that.
Well, I
But
tell you,
travel and adventure and just trying to be outside of the routine feels good to me right now.
you are so in alignment with your numbers because this year you're in a 9 personal year, the end of a cycle. And that whenever we hit that 9 ending, we feel like I've got to unplug from all these things that are attached to me. And I need to reinvent or redecide who I'm going to be in the new next cycle of my life. And that's exactly what you're saying. You're feeling that energy of the 9, which is all about surrender, let it go, clean out the
Surrender.
closet.
That's
Yep.
one of my words. That's what I did that before I got on this call. I just
I surrender.
surrender.
Yeah, well, then you're in full alignment with this 9 personal year that you're in, because the only way to get through those is to say, I surrender to whatever this needs to be and wherever it needs to go. And in those beautiful words, we are able to shift our frequency and not be afraid of the change,
Yeah.
not be afraid of what we're letting go of. And, numbers are so helpful because they give us a roadmap to all of that. And
Mhm.
as you and I talked about it before this podcast, sin is in a 6 personal year. So it's a different phase for her. She's in a year of healing herself, healing her heart, perhaps healing her worldview, healing many different aspects of who she is. And her big shift and change doesn't come for 3 years. So when we're in relationships, we also have to navigate that dynamic that one person may be changing before another one does. And how do we support that? So she's in the 6, you're in the 9. Those are two related numbers, and they have to do with healing, love, and surrender. So oh, Chris, I feel like I could talk to you forever about these things. And you're such a blessing to the dads. You're such a blessing to any dad who's grieving, to any parent who's grieving. And I'm so glad you're part of Helping Parents Heal. Will you be at the conference, the Helping Parents Heal conference in August?
Yes, absolutely. And we are having on Thursday, the first day, there is a father's panel group discussion. Um, so I'm not sure exactly how that'll take place, but I'm sure we'll be sharing the stage with some of the other authors in the book.
Oh, that's so good. That's going to help so many people to hear you all and see you all sitting up there sharing your story. I
Yeah.
work with so many clients who are the moms, and I'll say, how is your husband doing in all of this? And they, from what they tell me, the husband feels all alone and kind of
Mhm.
not like they understand how to cope with this, but they're holding it all inside. And I'm always going, just drag them to this conference, tell them they don't have to go to any of the events. They can just sit
Yeah.
outside by the pool. Because last time there were dads there who
Mhm.
said, my wife dragged me here and said I could just hang out by the pool. But then I just came in and listened to one speaker, and all of a sudden their whole worldview changes.
Yeah.
So we hold that out to all the dads in the world who may be grieving, that all you need is one new idea to help you see this differently, and to consider that your child lives on in a realm of unconditional love and joy, and that you still can have a
Yeah.
relationship with them.
Well, I just love that word surrender. And for any dad who is feeling, ambivalent or maybe resistant about going to this conference because, oh, it'll just be a bunch of crying women. No,
Right.
I
It's
mean that it,
nobody cries. Everybody's
it
in a high vibe at this
it is a
conference.
high vibration, and just stay open. If I had any advice for anybody going through grief, is just try your best to keep your heart soft and open. Um, my son and I'm going to give you just a little, I know you probably want to wrap up, right?
No, no, I want to hear whatever you have to
Because
share.
there's something on the cover here. There's three pelicans way off in the
Right.
distance. My wife took this picture, but the pelicans were not in the picture. We put them in for a reason. It's a little like Easter egg. My son
Hmm.
and I, my son and I each got pelican tattoos
Oh,
the
wow.
same night, the same artist, the same exact pattern. And he liked tattoos, so he just wanted to go get a tattoo with his dad, my
Yeah.
first one. I told him, Shawn, the reason we're getting a pelican is because it doesn't fly unless you have your arms in the sky. You want to just surrender and accept gratitude always, and that pelican will be flying.
Yes.
And when he crossed over, I was with him at the bed, and I was holding his pelican with one hand and had my hand over his heart. Um, because when he passed, his long story, I don't want to get into it, but he was in the hospital, and we had to make the decision to discontinue life support.
Yeah.
So we were there at that moment. I held that pelican. But since then, I got another pelican for him, and then one for Sin. But the
Oh,
whole idea of surrender is such a
yes.
big theme for me. And that's why it's on the cover of the book. But I
Yeah.
haven't told anybody else that.
Oh, well, we are honored to know this. And it's so amazing because pelicans, I grew up in New Orleans and in the South, and pelicans are everywhere. And I always knew they were some sort of sacred messenger. And
Yeah.
I love that you connect surrender to them
Yeah.
because, oh gosh, that really resonates with me.
Mm.
Oh, Chris, it is a joy to talk to you. And for anybody who wants to reach you, do they go to, what is it, www.chrisryanvideo.com? Is that how they would reach you?
Sure. I mean, there's a contact page there for my video company.
Okay.
And so my website, everything, it'll come back to my email. That's the best way.
Okay. And this
Yeah.
beautiful book is available on Amazon. Let me get
Hmm.
it in the light here. It's called
Yeah.
Helping Fathers Heal. You can do it better than me. Helping Fathers Heal. And the subtitle is Grief, Hope, and Our Search for Connection. And it
That's
is
right.
just a gorgeous book. And thank you so very much. It has been an absolute joy to talk to you today.
Mm.
So until we meet again, this is Sue Frederick having a mystical conversation. Many, many blessings to everyone.